The birthday cake sat untouched on the table as my husband's face turned ghost white. 2 wives, 2 children, 1 restaurant, and the most explosive family dinner that would destroy his world of lies forever. I never imagined that planning what I thought would be a loving birthday surprise for my husband would become the moment I would expose the most devastating betrayal of my entire life. My hands trembled as I watched Ethan's expression shift from joy to absolute terror in the span of 3 seconds. The man I had loved, trusted, and built a life with for 8 years was about to face the consequences of living the most elaborate lie I could never have imagined. My name is Rachel, and until that fateful evening, I believed I was living in a beautiful, albeit imperfect, marriage. Ethan and I had been together for 8 years, married for most of that time, and we had created what I thought was a wonderful life together. Our daughter Lily, who had just turned 5, was the light of both our lives, or so I believed. We lived in a charming 2-story house with a white picket fence, complete with a garden where Lily loved to play with her dolls, and where I spent countless hours nurturing the roses that Ethan claimed to adore. Every morning, I would wake up early to prepare breakfast for my family, pack Lily's lunch with heart-shaped sandwiches, and kiss Ethan goodbye as he headed off to what he told me was his demanding job in insurance sales. He would leave the house at 7:30 sharp, briefcase in hand, wearing one of the crisp shirts I had carefully ironed the night before. He would return home most evenings around 8, sometimes later, claiming that client meetings and paperwork kept him busy well into the night. For years, I accepted his explanations without question. After all, I loved him deeply, and love, I believed, meant trust. When he missed Lily's school plays because of last-minute client emergencies, I made excuses for him to our daughter. When he could not attend parent-teacher conferences because of urgent business trips, I went alone and proudly shared every detail with him when he returned home, exhausted and apologetic. When he fell asleep immediately after dinner, too tired to help with bedtime stories or weekend family activities, I convinced myself that he was working so hard to provide for our family. The first crack in my perfect world appeared on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning in March. I had been rushing to get Lily ready for school when I realized I had forgotten my phone in Ethan's car. He had already left for work, but I knew he kept a spare key hidden under the flower pot by our front door for emergencies. I grabbed the key, hurried to his car, and opened the passenger door to retrieve my phone from where I had left it the night before. That was when I saw it, a tiny pink baby sock wedged between the passenger seat and the center console. My heart stopped for a moment as I picked up the impossibly small sock, turning it over in my hands. It was clearly meant for a baby, much smaller than anything Lily had worn even as an infant. The sock was soft, expensive looking, and definitely not something that belonged to our family. I stood there in the driveway, holding this mysterious piece of evidence, trying to rationalize its presence in my husband's car. Perhaps it belonged to a client's baby, I told myself. Maybe someone had left it behind after Ethan had given them a ride, or it had somehow gotten mixed up with his work materials. I carefully placed the sock in my pocket, telling myself I would ask him about it when he came home that evening. But when 8 o'clock came and went, and Ethan walked through our front door with his usual tired smile and immediate collapse onto the couch, I found myself unable to bring up the sock. Something deep in my gut told me that his explanation would not satisfy the growing unease I felt. Over the following weeks, I found myself paying closer attention to details I had previously overlooked. I noticed that Ethan's phone was constantly buzzing with notifications, even during family dinners and weekend activities. When I would glance over at his screen, he would quickly turn it away or flip it face down, claiming it was just work emails that could wait until later. I observed that his work clothes sometimes smelled like unfamiliar perfume, a sweet floral scent that was definitely not my signature fragrance. Most troubling of all, I began to notice that he would sometimes slip away to take phone calls in the garage or backyard, speaking in hushed tones that I could not quite make out. The second major discovery came exactly 3 weeks after I found the baby sock. I was doing laundry on a Saturday morning while Ethan was supposedly at the office catching up on paperwork. As I emptied the pockets of his work jacket, my fingers closed around a small, unfamiliar phone. It was not his usual device. This one was smaller, cheaper looking, and definitely not the expensive smartphone his insurance company had provided for work purposes. My hands shook as I powered on the device, not knowing what I might find but unable to stop myself from looking. The phone was filled with text messages, photos, and call logs that made my blood run cold. Message after message revealed conversations between Ethan and a woman named Vanessa. Conversations that were intimate, loving, and absolutely devastating to read. The messages revealed that Vanessa believed herself to be married to Ethan. She sent him photos of a little boy who looked to be about 4 years old, calling him our son, and asking when Daddy would be coming home. There were pictures of family outings I had never heard about, birthday parties for a child I did not know existed, and intimate moments between Ethan and this other woman that broke my heart into a million pieces. As I scrolled through months of messages, I realized that Ethan had been living an incredibly elaborate double life for nearly 5 years. While I was home with Lily, believing myself to be his only wife and our daughter to be his only child, he had been building an entirely separate family across town. He had somehow managed to convince Vanessa that his frequent absences were due to business travel, just as he had convinced me that his long hours were due to demanding clients. The photographs were the most devastating evidence of all. I saw pictures of Ethan holding a baby boy in the hospital, the same expression of pure joy on his face that I remembered from the day Lily was born. There were photos of first steps, first birthdays, family vacations, and countless everyday moments that should have been precious memories between a father and his family. But this was not our family. This was his other family, the family he had hidden from me for years. I sat on our bedroom floor, surrounded by laundry and holding this secret phone, crying harder than I had ever cried in my entire life. The man I had loved and trusted completely had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. He had not just been unfaithful. He had created an entire alternate reality where he was husband and father to another woman and child while continuing to play the same role in our home. For several days after discovering the phone, I walked around our house like a ghost. I continued to make breakfast, pack lunches, and maintain our daily routines, but inside I was completely shattered. I would look at Ethan across the dinner table and wonder how he could sit there so calmly, asking about my day and helping Lily with her homework, when he was living such an enormous lie. I wondered how many times he had left our bed to go to hers, how many times he had told us both that he loved us, how many times he had made promises to our family, while knowing he had made the same promises to another family. The most heartbreaking realization was that Lily had a half-brother she did not know existed. And somewhere across town, there was a little boy who had no idea he had a half-sister. Both children were innocent victims of their father's deception. And both families had been robbed of the truth for years. As Ethan's birthday approached in early April, I knew I had to make a decision about how to handle this devastating discovery. I could confront him privately, demand explanations, and file for divorce quietly. I could protect our daughter from the immediate shock and trauma of learning about her father's double life. I could handle this betrayal with dignity and grace, the way I had been taught to handle difficult situations throughout my life. But the more I thought about the years of lies, the more I realized that a private confrontation would not be enough. Ethan had not just betrayed me. He had betrayed Vanessa and both of our children. He had stolen years from all of us, years we could never get back. He had built his happiness on a foundation of lies and manipulation, and he had done it so skillfully that neither Vanessa nor I had suspected the truth. I decided that if Ethan could live a double life, then he could face both of his lives at the same time. I began planning what would become the most unforgettable birthday dinner of his entire existence. Using the information from his secret phone, I was able to find Vanessa's contact information. The phone call I made to her was one of the most difficult conversations I had ever had in my life. When I told her who I was and why I was calling, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "That is impossible," she finally whispered. "Ethan is my husband. We have been together for 5 years. We have a son together. You must be mistaken." I understood her disbelief completely, because I would have reacted the same way if someone had called me with such devastating news. I gently explained that I had been married to Ethan for 8 years, that we had a daughter together, and that I had discovered evidence of their relationship on his secret phone. I offered to send her proof, photos of our wedding, pictures of our family, documents that would confirm everything I was telling her. When Vanessa saw the evidence I sent, she called me back immediately, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. We talked for over 2 hours that day, comparing notes about the man we both thought we knew. We realized that Ethan had been incredibly skilled at compartmentalizing his two lives, using his supposed work schedule to maintain relationships with both families without either of us becoming suspicious. Vanessa told me that Ethan had explained his frequent absences by claiming he traveled extensively for work, sometimes staying away for several days at a time to meet with important clients in other cities. She had no reason to doubt him, especially since he always returned with gifts and stories about his business trips. She had no idea that his business trips were actually time spent with me and Lily. As we shared our stories, both Vanessa and I realized that we had been living parallel lives for years. We had both been making the same sacrifices, telling ourselves the same stories about why Ethan was so often absent or distracted. We had both been raising our children largely on our own while believing that we were part of a committed family unit. The more we talked, the more determined we both became to make sure that Ethan faced the consequences of his actions. We agreed that he needed to understand the full impact of what he had done, not just to us as his wives, but to our children who had been denied the truth about their family. "I want him to see what he has done," Vanessa said through her tears. "I want him to look at both of us and both of our children and realize that his lies have hurt innocent people who trusted him completely." I suggested that we both attend Ethan's birthday dinner, which I had already begun planning before discovering his secret. We could each bring our children, and Ethan would be forced to face both of his families at the same time. The shock and public embarrassment would ensure that he could never again manipulate either of us with lies and false promises. Vanessa agreed immediately. We spent the next week coordinating our plan, making sure that we would both arrive at the restaurant at exactly the same time with our children. I had chosen Ethan's favorite upscale Italian restaurant, a place where we had celebrated numerous anniversaries and special occasions. The irony of confronting him there, in a place that held so many supposedly happy memories, felt perfectly appropriate. I made the reservation for a large table, telling the restaurant staff that we were planning a surprise birthday party for my husband, and that several family members would be joining us. I ordered his favorite cake, an elaborate chocolate creation with "Happy Birthday, Ethan," written in gold frosting. I even bought him a gift, a picture frame containing side-by-side photos of both families, with a note that read, "Now you can see them both at the same time." The night of the dinner, I dressed Lily in her prettiest dress, and told her we were going to surprise Daddy for his birthday. She was excited about the celebration, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. As we drove to the restaurant, I tried to prepare myself for what was about to happen, but nothing could have readied me for the emotional intensity of that evening. Vanessa and I had coordinated our arrival perfectly. She walked into the restaurant carrying her 4-year-old son, just as I was settling Lily into her chair at our reserved table. The moment I saw Vanessa in person, I was struck by how much we looked alike. Similar height, similar hair color, similar style of dress. It was as if Ethan had a specific type, and he had found two women who could fulfill the same role in his life. Her son was absolutely adorable, with Ethan's dark hair and bright smile. He looked so much like Lily that anyone could have immediately recognized them as siblings. As Vanessa approached our table, both children looked at each other with curious interest, having no idea they were about to meet their half-sibling for the first time. "You must be Rachel," Vanessa said softly, extending her hand to me. Despite the circumstances, I could see that she was a kind, intelligent woman who had been just as deceived as I had been. "And this must be Lily." "And you are Vanessa," I replied, shaking her hand and looking down at her son. "What is his name?" "This is Marcus," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Marcus, can you say hello to Mrs. Rachel and Lily?" As our children began to interact, chatting easily the way young children do when they meet for the first time, Vanessa and I took our seats at the table. We had both arrived about 15 minutes before Ethan was scheduled to meet us, giving us time to collect ourselves and prepare for his arrival. "Are you ready for this?" Vanessa asked me, her hands shaking as she arranged her napkin on her lap. "I do not think anyone could be ready for something like this," I replied honestly. "But I know it is the right thing to do. He needs to face what he has done to all of us." At exactly 7 o'clock, Ethan walked through the restaurant doors carrying a bouquet of flowers, and wearing the biggest smile I had seen on his face in months. He was clearly excited about his surprise birthday dinner, probably expecting a quiet celebration with just me and Lily, followed by cake and presents at home. He had no idea that his world was about to explode. I watched him scan the restaurant looking for our table, and I saw the exact moment when his eyes found us. His expression changed from joy to confusion to absolute horror in the span of about 3 seconds. The bouquet of flowers fell from his hands and scattered across the restaurant floor as he stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the impossible sight before him. There I was, his wife of 8 years, sitting at a table with our 5-year-old daughter. And there was Vanessa, the woman he had been living a secret life with for 5 years, sitting at the same table with their 4-year-old son. Both families, both children, all together in one place for the first time in their lives. Ethan's face turned completely white, then red, then white again. He looked like he might faint or be sick right there in the middle of the restaurant. Other diners began to notice his strange behavior and the tension at our table, and I could feel curious eyes turning in our direction. What is this?" he finally managed to stammer, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is happening here?" I stood up slowly, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone in the restaurant could hear it. "Happy birthday, Ethan," I said in a voice that was much calmer than I felt. "I planned a surprise birthday party for you. I invited both of your families." Vanessa also stood, her chin held high despite the tears that were beginning to form in her eyes. "Surprise, darling," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "It looks like you have some explaining to do." The entire restaurant fell silent. Even the servers stopped moving, sensing the drama that was unfolding at our table. Lily and Marcus continued chatting innocently, completely unaware that their father was standing there looking like he had seen a ghost. Ethan stumbled toward our table, his legs barely supporting him. "Rachel, I can explain," he began, but I held up my hand to stop him. "No explanations needed," I said firmly. "I know everything. We both know everything. The question is, what are you going to tell the children?" For the first time since walking into the restaurant, Ethan looked directly at Lily and Marcus, both of whom were now looking at him with excited smiles, waiting for their daddy to join the birthday celebration. I could see the reality of the situation hitting him like a physical blow. These were his children, both of them, and they were meeting each other for the first time because of his lies and deception. "Daddy," Lily called out happily. "Look, I made a new friend. His name is Marcus." "Hi, Daddy," Marcus said shyly, waving at his father. "Mommy said we were going to surprise you for your birthday." Ethan sank into the chair across from me, his head in his hands. The weight of what he had done was finally hitting him with full force. For years, he had managed to keep his 2 lives separate, but now both of his families were sitting at the same table, and there was no way to continue the lies. "How did you find out?" he asked quietly, not looking up from his hands. "Does it matter?" I replied. "The point is that we know. Both of us. And now our children are going to know too." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder I had prepared earlier that week. Inside were divorce papers, child support calculations, custody agreements, and copies of all the evidence I had gathered about his double life. I placed the folder in front of him on the table. "This contains everything you need to know about what happens next," I said. "Divorce papers for both marriages, because obviously you cannot be legally married to 2 people. Child support calculations for both children. And a detailed account of every lie you have told over the past 5 years." Vanessa reached into her own purse and pulled out a similar folder. "I have prepared the same documentation," she said. "We have both consulted with attorneys, and we both know exactly what our rights and options are." Ethan finally looked up, his eyes red and filled with tears. "I never meant for this to happen," he said weakly. "I never meant to hurt anyone." "But you did hurt us," I replied. "You hurt all of us. You stole years from both families. You lied to your children about who they are and who their family is. You made choices every single day to continue this deception, and now you have to face the consequences." The children had stopped playing and were now listening to our conversation, sensing that something serious was happening even though they could not understand the full implications. Lily looked confused and a little scared, while Marcus had moved closer to his mother's chair. "What happens now?" Ethan asked, his voice barely audible. Now you get to explain to both of your children why they have been living a lie, Vanessa said firmly. You get to tell them why they have a sibling they never knew about. You get to figure out how to be a father to both of them while living with the consequences of your choices. I looked around the restaurant and realized that our private drama had become a public spectacle. Other diners were openly staring at our table, servers were whispering among themselves, and the manager was hovering nearby, clearly unsure whether to intervene. The birthday cake is in the kitchen, I announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. I ordered your favorite, chocolate with gold frosting. But I am not sure you have much to celebrate tonight. Ethan buried his face in his hands again, his shoulders shaking with what I assumed were tears of shame and regret. Part of me felt sorry for him, remembering the man I had fallen in love with 8 years earlier. But the larger part of me felt only anger and disappointment that he had chosen to handle his unhappiness in our marriage by building a secret life instead of being honest about his feelings. I loved you, I said quietly, leaning across the table so only he could hear. I trusted you completely. I believed every lie you told me because I thought we were building a life together. But you were building 2 lives, and both of them were based on deception. I loved you too, he whispered back. I love both of you. That was the problem. I could not choose. So you chose to lie instead, Vanessa interjected, having overheard our whispered conversation. You chose to steal time and honesty from both of us instead of making the difficult but honest choice about what you really wanted. The server approached our table cautiously, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but needing to do her job. Should I bring out the birthday cake? She asked hesitantly. I looked at Ethan, then at Vanessa, then at our 2 beautiful children who were still trying to understand why their father looked so upset on his birthday. Yes, I said finally. Bring out the cake. This may be the last birthday we all spend together, so we might as well make it memorable. The server returned a few minutes later with the elaborate chocolate cake, complete with lit candles and "Happy Birthday, Ethan," written in gold frosting. She set it down in the center of our table, and both children clapped excitedly, their earlier confusion temporarily forgotten in the excitement of birthday cake. Make a wish, Daddy, Lily called out happily. Yeah, make a wish, Marcus echoed, bouncing in his chair. Ethan looked at the cake, then at both of his children, then at the 2 women whose lives he had destroyed with his lies. I wish, he said slowly, that I could go back and make different choices. I wish I could have been honest from the beginning instead of hurting the people I love most. He blew out the candles and both children cheered. But there was no joy in the celebration, only the heavy weight of consequences and the knowledge that our families would never be the same again. As we ate birthday cake in uncomfortable silence, I thought about all the birthdays, holidays, and special occasions that Ethan had missed with our family because he was celebrating the same events with his other family. I thought about all the times I had defended his absences to Lily, making excuses for why Daddy could not be there for important moments in her life. I thought about all the times I had gone to bed alone, believing that my husband was working late to provide for our family, when he was actually tucking another child into bed and kissing another woman goodnight. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I could barely wrap my mind around the full scope of what he had done. It was not just adultery. It was the systematic construction of an alternate reality that had lasted for years. It was lying to his children about who they were and who their family was. It was stealing precious time and experiences from both families, and using that stolen time to build happiness for himself based on deception. After we finished the cake, Vanessa and I began gathering our things to leave. We had accomplished what we set out to do. Ethan had been forced to face both of his families at the same time, and he now understood that his lies had been exposed and that there would be serious consequences for his actions. The divorce papers are all in order, I told him as I helped Lily put on her coat. My attorney will be in touch with you next week to begin the process. I will be seeking full custody of Lily, as well as child support and alimony. Mine too, Vanessa added, lifting Marcus into her arms. Since we were never legally married, there will be no divorce proceedings for us, but I will be seeking child support and establishing a formal custody arrangement. Ethan remained seated at the table, staring at the empty cake plate and the scattered birthday candles. Can we work this out between us? he asked desperately. Do we have to involve lawyers and make this so complicated? You made it complicated when you decided to live a double life for 5 years, I replied firmly. You made it complicated when you lied to your children about their family. You made it complicated when you chose deception over honesty. Now we are just dealing with the legal reality of the choices you made. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, Lily ran over to Marcus and gave him a big hug. Will I see you again? She asked innocently. I like having a brother. Marcus hugged her back and looked up at his mother. Can Lily come play with us sometime? The question broke my heart, because it highlighted one of the most tragic aspects of Ethan's deception. Our children were siblings who had been denied the opportunity to know each other because of their father's lies. They had immediately connected with each other, the way siblings often do, but they had been robbed of years of shared experiences and family bonding. We will figure something out, Vanessa said gently, tears streaming down her face. You two are brother and sister, and that is important. We will make sure you get to see each other, even though things are going to be different now. I hugged Vanessa goodbye. Two women united by betrayal and determined to protect our children from further harm. Thank you for doing this with me, I said softly. I could not have faced this alone. Thank you for calling me, she replied. I needed to know the truth, even though it hurts more than I ever imagined possible. As Lily and I walked to our car, I looked back through the restaurant window and saw Ethan still sitting at our table, surrounded by the remnants of his birthday celebration and the ruins of both of his families. He looked completely defeated, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered the years of lies, the stolen time, the betrayal of trust, and the impact his choices would have on our children for the rest of their lives. The drive home was quiet, with Lily asking occasional questions about Marcus and why Daddy had looked so sad on his birthday. I tried to answer her questions honestly but age-appropriately, explaining that sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they love, and that our family was going to be going through some changes. Over the following weeks, the legal proceedings moved forward quickly. Ethan did not contest the divorce or the custody arrangements, perhaps understanding that he had no grounds to fight for shared custody, given the circumstances of his deception. He moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town, close enough to maintain a relationship with Lily, but far enough away that I did not have to see him regularly. Vanessa and I maintained contact, both for legal reasons related to coordinating child support and custody issues, and because we had developed an unlikely friendship based on our shared experience. We arranged regular play dates between Lily and Marcus, making sure that the siblings could maintain their relationship despite the complicated circumstances of their family situation. The most difficult part of the entire ordeal was explaining the situation to our extended families and friends. Both Vanessa and I had to tell parents, siblings, and close friends that the men they thought they knew had been living elaborate lies for years. Some people were supportive and understanding, while others struggled to believe that someone could maintain such a complete deception for so long. Ethan's own family was devastated when they learned the truth. His parents, who had been loving grandparents to Lily and had welcomed me as a daughter-in-law, were shocked to discover that they had another grandchild they had never met. The holidays that year were particularly difficult as everyone tried to figure out how to maintain family relationships while dealing with the fallout from Ethan's choices. As for Ethan himself, the consequences of his double life were severe and long-lasting. He lost both of his families, both of his homes, and most of his friendships. The financial burden of supporting 2 children while maintaining his own living expenses left him struggling financially. His reputation in our community was destroyed when word of his deception spread, and he eventually had to find a new job when his employer learned about the situation. But perhaps the most devastating consequence for Ethan was the impact on his relationships with his children. Both Lily and Marcus struggled to understand why their father had lied to them about their family, and both children went through periods of anger, confusion, and sadness as they processed the truth about their father's choices. Family therapy helped, but the trust between father and children had been damaged in ways that would take years to repair, if it could be repaired at all. Looking back on that birthday dinner now, I am still amazed by the complexity of emotions I felt that evening. There was anger, betrayal, sadness, and disappointment, But there was also a strange sense of relief that the truth had finally been revealed. For years, I had sensed that something was not quite right in my marriage, but I had dismissed my intuition and chosen to trust my husband instead. Learning the truth was devastating, but it was also liberating because it meant I no longer had to live with the nagging feeling that I was missing something important. The birthday dinner was also empowering because it allowed both Vanessa and me to take control of a situation where we had been powerless victims. Instead of allowing Ethan to continue manipulating us with lies and false promises, we forced him to face the reality of what he had done, and to begin dealing with the consequences of his choices. We refused to be passive victims and instead became active participants in determining our own futures, and the futures of our children. Most importantly, the birthday dinner ensured that Lily and Marcus would have the opportunity to know each other as siblings. Despite the complicated and painful circumstances of their meeting, they immediately formed a bond that has only grown stronger over time. They now spend alternate weekends together, have regular video calls, and are developing the kind of close sibling relationship that should have been part of their lives from the beginning. As I finish writing this story, it has been almost 2 years since that unforgettable birthday dinner. Both Vanessa and I have moved forward with our lives, focusing on raising our children and building new futures based on honesty and truth rather than deception and lies. We both eventually began dating again, and we both approached new relationships with a hard-earned wisdom about the importance of trust and communication. Ethan continues to see both children regularly, and he has been working hard in therapy to understand the psychological factors that led him to make such destructive choices. He has expressed genuine remorse for the pain he caused, and he has been consistent in his financial support and his efforts to be a good father to both Lily and Marcus. Whether he will ever be able to fully repair the damage he caused remains to be seen, but he is at least trying to take responsibility for his actions and their consequences. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that love without trust is not really love at all. I thought I loved Ethan completely, but I realized that I actually loved the version of him that he presented to me, not the complete person he actually was. True love requires honesty, transparency, and the courage to be vulnerable with another person. Ethan was never able to be truly vulnerable with either Vanessa or me because he was too busy maintaining his elaborate deceptions. I also learned that intuition is a powerful tool that should not be ignored. For years, I had small nagging doubts about various aspects of my marriage, but I dismissed them because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale version of my life. If I had trusted my instincts and investigated my concerns earlier, I might have discovered the truth before 5 years of lies had accumulated, and I might have been able to protect Lily from some of the confusion and pain she experienced. Finally, I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to refuse to enable someone else's destructive behavior. By exposing Ethan's lies at that birthday dinner, Vanessa and I forced him to confront the reality of what he had done, and to begin the difficult process of taking responsibility for his choices. It would have been easier in some ways to handle the situation privately, but the public confrontation ensured that Ethan could never again manipulate either of us with lies and false promises. The birthday cake may have gone largely uneaten that night, but the truth was finally served, and sometimes the truth is the most important gift you can give to someone, even when it is painful to receive. Ethan's double life came to an end that evening, and while the consequences were severe, they were also necessary for everyone involved to begin the process of healing and moving forward with their lives based on honesty rather than deception. That unforgettable birthday dinner changed all of our lives forever, but it also gave us the opportunity to build new lives based on truth, integrity, and genuine love. And in the end, that may have been the greatest gift of all. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of the importance of truth in relationships, or if it gave you strength to face difficult situations in your own life, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter, stories that remind us all of the power of courage, honesty, and standing up for what is right. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of people who believe that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living a lie.